Did you see that the Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary and now acting NASA administrator, announced plans to build a nuclear reactor on the moon?
No, I somehow missed that.
Okay, let's turn to tariffs, especially the Twitter tariff war between Trump and India, because I think we're used to like kind of the flailing, tariff by tweet policy, but I was sort of surprised to see India get pulled into the crosshairs given the stakes here. So just to rewind the tape a bit, Ben, last week Trump announced a 25% tariff on India. He said he's angry about trade barriers and also suggested that he would add some sort of additional penalty because India was buying or selling military equipment with Russia. This 25% tariff is supposed to go into place on August 7th. But since that additional, sort of threat, Trump has been popping off on India for buying Russian oil and gas. This is from a Truth Social post on Monday. Quote, India is not only buying massive amounts of Russian oil, they are then, for much of the oil purchased, selling it on the open market for big profits. They don't care how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine, end quote. Pretty incredible if you just figured that out, Ben. India responded by calling Trump's tariff threats unjustified and unreasonable. The Russians said, quote, attempts to force countries to stop trade relations with them are not legitimate. So, Ben, Trump went on CNBC Tuesday to try to kind of smooth things over. Let's listen.
So India has not been a good trading partner because they do a lot of business with us, but we don't do business with them. So we settled on 25%, but I think I'm going to raise that very substantially over the next 24 hours because they're buying Russian oil, they're fueling the war machine, and if they're going to do that, then I'm not going to be happy.
So India and China have long been the largest purchasers of Russian oil since the Russian invasion. I guess he's just figuring that out. Trump has also announced that August 8th is the new deadline for Russia and Ukraine to figure out a ceasefire deal. Putin is trying to, tap him along, as Trump would say, by saying he'd consider a meeting or having Dmitry Peskov, his spokesman, say he'd consider a meeting. But I don't know, busy month, I guess. Ben, I thought Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi had kind of a bromance going. Where do you think this turbulence is coming from?
I don't know. It's peculiar to me because clearly Trump is not just decided to. I mean, the one thing we've always said about tariffs that I think if you want to hold on to one truism, it's that they're never going to go away, that Trump likes to turn the dial up. He likes to focus on a different country every week. And he decided to focus on India. And them buying Russian oil and gas is not some new thing that just popped up. I mean, he would have been aware of this in January, February. He would have been aware of this on the original Liberation Day. And so he's kind of grabbed onto this as one of the reasons why he's hammering them with tariffs. There's a number of things that are notable about it. One is, just so people know, and the Biden people have said this, they kind of gave India a pass in part because India, remember there were price caps set on how much you could pay for Russian oil and gas. And the Indians were actually paying at that price cap. So it was a lower price point. Ideally, you'd want them to not buy any, I guess, but they have hundreds of millions of people that need electricity and they can buy this oil and gas cheap, and they thought they were doing that as part of a U.S. strategy. And so now they're being punished for having kind of agreed to do that. It's also Modi could not have gone more out of his way to be a buddy of Trump's. Remember the Howdy Modi rally where Modi basically endorsed Trump's reelection in 2020. I will say there's a whole bunch of constituencies in the United States that falsely thought that Trump was their friend. Some is this kind of pro-Modi Indian American community that is, lo and behold, finding that Trump is not a reliable friend. Modi's finding that Trump is not a reliable friend. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I think there are a lot of trade barriers that India has, and you want to negotiate your way through those, but you're not going to do that overnight because it's a big, complex economy. The one other thing I want to say about this, so it's really worth putting a pin in, is we are now fighting with the Chinese. We are fighting more with the Russians. We're fighting with the Indians. We're kind of trying to humiliate the Europeans.
Constantly, yeah.
Who we are, where are the friends? This is a recipe for the rest of the world to literally gang up on us. Yeah. I would have at least thought you try to hug India into your team, right? If you want to stand up to the Chinese. Fighting all of them together seems like a really dumb strategy.
And I think Trump was complaining about agricultural import barriers in India, but that is not a place where Modi can give. So many of his constituents are living on the edge of poverty because they are farmers. And if all of a sudden more U.S. agricultural products are flooding into India, that will be devastating for him. It'll be devastating for the economy.
I mean, you'll remember years ago there was this like strike among farmers that basically shut down India. It's the most dangerous moment Modi's had as prime minister. You've got hundreds of millions of people who rely on agriculture. Many of them are subsistence farmers. And so if you are demanding that the Indians allow all these agricultural products to flow in from the U.S., those people are going to fucking strike again and shut the economy down. So this is what happens when you try to negotiate trade deals in 30 days, 90 days. Like, India is not going to be able to do that.
And they must just be so confused. Like, what is this guy mad about? This is a completely random aside. Something made me think of it. Did you see that the Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary and now acting NASA administrator, announced plans to build a nuclear reactor on the moon?
No, I somehow missed that.
They want to do it. They want to do some sort of like 100 kilowatt nuclear reactor on the moon by 2030. It's so funny to have your acting, the guy who has no idea what he's doing, road rules guy, acting administrator, announcing massive like budget cuts over at NASA. And like they're doging all these people, but also they want to build a nuclear reactor.
Medicaid, but we'll put. You know what? One of my problems is with the Trump cabinet is that I kind of missed a decade of pop culture when we were in the White House. But B, I never watched like Road Rules or
it's good stuff.
The Duck Family or whatever that one was.
I didn't watch Duck Dynasty.
Like, and these people are all in the cabinet now.
I know, man.
Like, because everybody say, "Oh, Sean Duffy, Road Rules." I'm like, well, I didn't watch fucking Road Rules.
You got to go back.
I mean, there's a lot of people from that reality TV
Fox,
ecosystem. Yeah.
It is. It's weird. All right, that was a random thing. Another trade thing we wanted to
highlight. Well, we should be aware if we're gonna have a nuclear plant on the moon.
It seems like a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't want to put nukes on the moon. Also, I don't know. I don't understand power generation, but maybe let's try solar.
Yeah.
It feels like you have good access.
They'll do
to
anything
sunlight.
to not use solar. Yeah.
I know. All right, Ben. So remember in Trump's joint session speech, that's the State of the Union.
Who could forget?
But we call it a joint session when it's the first time for reasons I forget.
It's a memorable speech.
It's dorky. In that speech, Trump made fun of an African country named Lesotho. He called it a country, quote, nobody has ever heard of. So a few weeks later on Liberation Day, Trump once again decided to kick the shit out of Lesotho by slapping them with a whopping 50% tariff. And everyone was like, what? Why are we doing this? Because this is a tiny landlocked country. It's home to like about 2 million people. Many of them live in poverty and is the furthest thing from a threat to the U.S. economy or to U.S. manufacturing jobs. So why are we tariffing the life out of them? And Trump's goons at the time pointed to the U.S. trade deficit with Lesotho to justify the tariff rate. So the U.S. imported...
Which is insane.
You should
they
explain
have no
why
money to
that's
buy
explained.
anything from us.
Yeah, so we import like $235 million worth of goods from them, mostly textiles. They imported like $3 million worth of U.S. stuff, which again is not surprising.
They don't have money to buy our stuff.
Right, it's an impoverished country. So ultimately, Trump ends up, fast forwarding a bit, he ends up slapping a 15% tariff on Lesotho, which is not insane, like 50%, but it is still enough to do enormous damage to their economy. But some of it was already permanently done, right? Because the threat of the 50% tariff, all kinds of other cuts, just like kind of cratered their industries and made companies look other places for textiles. And so the textile industry is the largest industry. It employs over 30,000 people, many of them women. It's like clients like, Levi's, Walmart, et cetera. And so you have these companies in Lesotho being crushed, and you also have countries with more like diplomatic clout taking advantage of the tariffs that Trump's putting in place on others to poach business. You got scammy lobbyists going to countries like Lesotho and trying to demand millions of dollars to pay for lobbying. And so before the tariffs, I mean, Ben, do you want to explain how the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which is about to expire, had kind of helped these smaller countries export things to the U.S.?
Yeah, no, I mean, the United States deliberately, through the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, set up these kind of trade preferences to try to create economic growth by getting rid of barriers for them to sell goods into the United States, for the U.S. therefore to provide investment. And the idea was, if these are growing economies, it's going to be good for them. It's going to lift people out of poverty, but ultimately it's also going to create markets. Like the way that you actually address in the long term the trade deficit issue in a place like Africa is you need places like Kenya and South Africa to become, rich enough and
have a middle class.
To have a middle class. It's suddenly they're also consumers, and then you have a more mature trading relationship. So you have to kind of help them develop to the point when you have a more mature trading relationship, and cutting them off. And by the way, what China's answer to that is that we're just going to pour money into your country and build stuff and build infrastructure, which they actually like better, than these kind of, negotiate, because they had to agree to a bunch of other steps in order to be a part of the African Growth and Opportunity Act. They had to kind of make changes and reforms and kind of set up economies that plug into our capitalism and stuff, right? So it's not like we didn't get anything out of this. Chinese come with no strings attached, and they just build infrastructure and like maybe pay some people off, and they're making investments. And so I think what's so horrific about this is, first of all, you're right. Like Lesotho can't compete because they can't hire the fake lobbyists that get them out of jail. But they're also not big enough. Like as a textile industry, like Bangladesh will be hurt a lot by tariffs, but there's such a big infrastructure of textiles that it's hard for big companies to just move operations out. It's easy to close up. If you're looking at where can we cut costs and not want to pay tariffs, you just start with the smaller countries, who are also the countries that are more vulnerable to the USAID cutoff.
Yes.
And so we are doubly fucking these countries over in ways that will lead to like death and poverty and disease. So this is something that is, not a small stain on the Trump administration and the country.
This is the bigger point I wanted to get at, because we've kind of moved on from the Elon Doge madness and the devastation of USAID, but the impact is still rippling out. On top of that, the tariff craziness and the letters, they're kind of like one-day stories now because it happens so often. But in a country like Lesotho, it is going to cause irreparable damage. I was listening to the BBC Global News podcast a couple of days ago. They did this story about trying to combat child sex abuse and trafficking in Kenya. And they were interviewing this woman who had been a sex worker for 40 years. And now she's dedicated her life to taking in young girls who escape this fucking evil trafficking. And this woman, in addition to taking in these girls, she tries to provide HIV/AIDS protection to people in the community, mostly condoms. But now all the condoms are drying up and about to be gone. And the people who are employed by USAID to do that work are about to be unemployed. So this whole community is just absolutely devastated because we pulled the rug on them.
Yeah. And it has political impacts too, because the people I've talked to over the years in Lesotho are kind of, there's a king there. Shocker, he's not the best, most benign leader. And he's an autocrat. There's a lot of corruption. And what happens when you withdraw, when industry dries up like this and revenue dries up and USAID dries up, the place becomes more autocratic, right? There's less resources that are more under the control of the bad guys. And then there's more of a black market. There's more criminality. There's more human. I'm not saying all these things are definitely going to happen in Lesotho, but I do think across, all these countries that are being hurt in this way, the worst actors tend to benefit in a weird way from, this kind of economic collapse or this kind of withdrawal of international support.
Yeah. It's great work, Mr. Trump. Sort of related story, also in the barrel this week, Ben, is Switzerland, which got completely hosed with a 39% tariff rate last Friday, one of the highest in the world. Only Laos, Myanmar, and Syria are higher. I think they have 40 to 41%, which is a very weird list, by the way. I don't understand why we're tariffing Syria at 40%. But anyway, so what happened here with Switzerland, it seems like it was a lethal mix of Europeans thinking they were negotiating in good faith and Trump's complete and total economic ignorance. To back up, so the Swiss have been negotiating for months with the U.S. Trade Rep, Jameson Greer, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. I think their goal was to land at a 10 or 15% tariff coupled with a big investment, $150 billion investment by the Swiss into the U.S.
Well, these fake announcements.
These fake announcements. Trump thinks it's a sovereign wealth fund for him. But then on Thursday, the Swiss president, Karine Keller-Sutter, had a 20-minute call with Trump that went terribly. And per usual, Trump got fixated on the U.S. trade deficit with Switzerland. Trump did this phoner interview with CNBC. He talked about a lot of crazy shit. But this is the part where he started ranting about Switzerland.
It's time that they pay up, and they have to pay up. We couldn't afford to have the deficits. Look, I did something with Switzerland the other day. I spoke to their prime minister. The woman was nice, but she didn't want to listen. And they paid essentially no tariffs. And I said, we have a $41 billion deficit with you, madam. I didn't know her. I said, we have a $41 billion deficit, and you want to pay 1% tariffs. You wanted 1%. I said, you're not going to pay 1%.
So after that very happy call with Trump, which I think this all happened coincidentally on Swiss National Day, the country got hit with a 39% tariff. A Swiss tabloid called this Switzerland's biggest loss since 1515 when the French beat Switzerland in the Battle of Marignano. More on that in a bit. Yeah. But Ben, to just explain to listeners why we have a trade deficit with Switzerland, it's because of gold. Switzerland refines about a third of the world's gold. They export it in the form of gold bars, most of which goes to New Jersey, to Bob Menendez's house.
Under the bed.
Yes,
yeah.
Right under the bed, in the closet, in the vest. But gold makes up 2/3 of recent Swiss exports to America. It's exempted by tariffs. Their second biggest export is pharmaceuticals, which Trump has been making a lot of noise about too. Last week, Trump sent letters to 17 pharma companies, 2 of them Swiss, demanding lower prices. But the administration has yet to set a tariff policy on drugs, so pharmaceuticals are still tariff-free. But so like after this weekend, like the Swiss are just like, what the fuck, right? Their economy is about to get crushed. So after this just weekend of, what the hell is going on in Switzerland, the Swiss president had to hop on a plane to Washington, try to do damage control, try to get a better deal, and see how she could figure it out. But Ben, I mean, again, not a good way to run a railroad.
I mean, are you really worried about the Swiss? I mean, when you look out at the world, this is not the country that you should be stressed out about.
Alps.
They've got Alps, they've got cheese, they've got a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's fine. They're a small country. Where is this all going? Because it's clearly not going to end in Trump's presidency. These endless tariffs. These countries are going to take. The Swiss do have, in case you weren't aware, like a relatively healthy banking sector that is like strategically important to the global
Donald
economy.
Trump probably likes it too.
Yeah, I mean, but they could take that and deal with the Russians or we're just creating so many incentives for these countries to literally, maybe they'll fly to U.S. and they'll promise to invest $1 trillion in the U.S. economy and it'll be some fake announcement to get the tariffs down. But then they're going to fly home and just start really aggressively working to figure out how to treat us like the drunk that they don't want to allow into the neighborhood,
and also just they might fly home on an F-35 because in 2021 they agreed to buy 36 F-35s at a price of $7.5 billion, if not more.
Yeah. Well,
so it's seems like they're doing some pretty good investing in all the things Trump wants.
Yeah. There's no logic to this. I mean, Lesotho, India, and Switzerland, the 3 countries we've talked about, have nothing in common, and they're totally different reasons. With India, it's like he's now mad about them buying Russian gas. Lesotho, it's like a trade deficit that makes no sense. Like Switzerland, I don't, none of this makes sense either mathematically or politically.
No.